Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive with us. Today, we're taking a look at the Amazon rainforest.
That's right.
We've got a great Wikipedia article here with tons of information on everything, Amazon history, biodiversity, deforestation, and even some potential solutions.
Yeah.
But to really help us break it all down, we have an expert here with us today.
I'm happy to be here. The Amazon's a fascinating place. I'm excited to talk about it.
I have to admit, my knowledge of the Amazon basically begins and ends with big rainforest.
Okay.
So I'm ready to learn.
Okay.
Where should we even begin with something like this?
Well, how about we start with a story? You know, the name Amazon itself, it's not an indigenous name. It actually comes from Francisco de Orellana.
Okay.
He was an explorer. Back in the 1540s, he claimed that on one of his expeditions, they encountered this group of fierce warrior women.
Oh, wow.
And he likened them to the Amazons from Greek mythology.
Wow, so the name is rooted in a European explorer's interpretation of what he saw.
That's right.
Which makes me wonder how much of what we know about the Amazon is sort of colored by that outsider perspective.
It's a great question and leads us to another big misconception about the Amazon, that it was basically sparsely populated before Europeans arrived.
Right.
And for a long time, people thought the rainforest soil just wasn't fertile enough to support any sort of large-scale agriculture.
I've heard that, yeah.
Wow.
Like it was this untouched wilderness.
Yeah.
Pristine.
And that whole narrative is being seriously challenged now by all these new archaeological
So are there other discoveries, too, that kind of support this idea that the Amazon was more densely populated, more sophisticated?
Absolutely. Back in the 1970s, researchers found these geoglyphs, these massive earthworks, hidden beneath the rainforest canopy.
Geoglyphs like the Nazca lines in Peru,
Very similar.
but in the Amazon.
Yeah. And these intricate patterns, they date back to the first millennium AD.
Wow.
And they really challenge our assumptions about the region's history.
I mean, to carve something like that into the landscape, that would take a lot of effort, a lot of coordination. That just lends more evidence to this idea of like a more organized society.
Exactly. And it also links back to something you mentioned earlier, the whole fertility of the soil. You know, for years, Betty Meggers, a prominent anthropologist, she was adamant that the rainforest couldn't support large-scale agriculture. But all this evidence suggests otherwise. And this is where the concept of terra preta comes in.
Oh, yeah, terra preta. I've heard of that, but I'm not sure I really know what it is.
So terra preta means black earth. It's this incredibly fertile soil that's found in the Amazon.
Okay.
And what's fascinating is that it's anthropogenic, meaning it was created by humans. Indigenous peoples developed all these techniques to enrich the soil.
Wow.
And they created these patches of really fertile land that could then sustain larger populations.
So not only were there more people there than we thought, they were actively managing the land to make it more fertile.
That's right.
That's amazing.
It really makes you wonder what other knowledge and practices these ancient Amazonian societies might have had.
Yeah, it must have been just a treasure trove of information.
Absolutely. And that highlights another important aspect of the Amazon, its biodiversity.
Yeah, so the rainforest is like famously biodiverse. I know it's home to just a massive number of different species, but can you put that into perspective for me?
Yeah, so 1 in 10 known species on Earth is found in the Amazon.
Wow.
It houses like 40,000 plant species, over 2,200 fish.
Wow.
Almost 1,300 birds.
That's wild.
And countless insects.
Are a lot of those species unique to the Amazon?
Absolutely. You've got creatures like the giant leaf frog, blends right in. You've got the Hoatzin, this weird bird with a digestive system more like a cow.
Wow.
And then the Titan beetle, which can grow to be over 6 inches long.
That's huge.
You won't find any of these anywhere else on Earth.
It's incredible to think about like this teeming ecosystem. It's hard not to feel a sense of urgency, though, knowing what we know about how much human activity is impacting the Amazon.
Yeah, you're right to feel that urgency. The Amazon is facing immense pressure from deforestation, and that's where we need to turn our attention next.
Okay, let's dive into that.
Yeah.
What are the biggest drivers of deforestation in the Amazon?
I mean, there are several culprits, but I would say the primary one is human settlement and development.
Okay.
People clearing land for agriculture, for cattle ranching, infrastructure projects.
So it's not just one thing, it's a combination of factors.
Exactly. And a lot of times these factors are interconnected, like soy farming, for example. Brazil's the world's largest soybean producer. And a lot of that soy is grown in the Amazon. So you have The clearing of land for soy plantations leads to deforestation, obviously.
Yeah.
But then it also creates a need for more infrastructure, roads, processing plants,
Yeah.
which further encroaches on the rainforest.
It's like a domino effect.
Yeah.
One thing leads to another. And what about like the Trans-Amazonian Highway? I imagine that must have had a big impact on opening up the rainforest for development.
It has, for sure.
Yeah.
It's still not complete, but the highway has facilitated increased settlement and deforestation. There's a lot of debate still about whether to complete it.
Right.
Some people argue it will bring economic benefits. Others are worried about even further environmental destruction.
It's tough. Like, how do you balance economic development versus environmental protection?
Yeah, it's a tough question. And then you have cattle ranching, too,
Yeah.
which is another major contributor to deforestation. Most deforested land in the Amazon ends up as pasture for cattle because the global demand for beef is huge.
It's not even a sustainable practice, right? Like the soil in the Amazon's only fertile for a certain period, so they have to keep clearing more and more land.
You're exactly right. It's a classic example of short-term profits coming at the expense of long-term sustainability. The environmental costs are huge, and the yields are actually pretty low.
Yeah. It's a complicated issue with no easy answers.
Yeah.
And then you layer climate change on top of it,
Yeah.
which is impacting the rainforest too, right?
Absolutely. The Amazon plays this crucial role in regulating global climate. It's like a massive carbon sink. It absorbs so much carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
Right.
But when you deforest it, burn the trees, all that carbon goes back into the atmosphere, which contributes to global warming.
So it's a double whammy. You're destroying habitat and exacerbating climate change.
Exactly. And as temperatures rise, you have that risk of the rainforest drying out, which makes it more susceptible to fires. You could even see it transform into savanna or even desert.
It's scary to think about. We're playing with fire, literally.
The stakes are incredibly high. The fate of the Amazon is tied to the fate of the planet.
It's overwhelming, honestly. Is there any good news, though? Are there solutions?
There are some promising solutions, a more forest-friendly economy. That's what I'm most excited to talk about.
Well, let's dive into that. I'm eager to hear more.
Me too.
So we left off talking about a more forest-friendly economy for the Amazon. What makes you so optimistic about that?
Well, one really encouraging thing is that more and more people are starting to recognize the economic value of a healthy rainforest.
Okay.
A World Bank report came out in 2023 that estimated that deforestation in Brazil could be costing the country hundreds of billions of dollars every year.
Wait, so destroying the rainforest is actually hurting their economy?
Yeah. The short-term gains from things like unsustainable logging or cattle ranching are nothing compared to the benefits of a healthy rainforest in the long run. The report really shifted the conversation.
I see, so it's like an investment. But what does a forest-friendly economy even look like? What are some of those sustainable practices?
Well, one promising area is ecotourism.
Oh, right.
The Amazon has incredible potential for ecotourism. Visitors get to experience this unique biodiversity firsthand, and they're supporting local communities and conservation efforts.
That's the save the rainforest by visiting it idea, right?
Exactly. But can it really make a difference?
Yeah, can it?
It can, especially if it's done responsibly. The key is to make sure these ecotourism operations are sustainable themselves, minimize their impact. They should work closely with local communities, respecting their cultures and sharing the benefits.
So it's not just about bringing in tourists, it's about doing it in a way that benefits everyone.
Right. And there are other initiatives, too. Brazil's banking federation, they just implemented a new sustainability standard.
No.
They require meat packers to make sure their meat doesn't come from illegally deforested land.
That's a pretty big step. Is it working?
It's still early, but it's creating financial incentives for sustainability within the beef industry. And similar initiatives are being explored internationally, targeting those supply chains.
Makes sense. If consumers aren't buying products linked to deforestation, then there's less incentive to clear the land in the first place.
Yeah.
What about technology? What role can technology play?
Technology's huge. Remote sensing, like satellite imagery and drones, it's being used to monitor deforestation in real time.
Wow.
So authorities can track illegal activity, respond more effectively.
So it's like a surveillance system?
Sort of.
Yeah.
But the data also empowers indigenous communities, helps them map and defend their ancestral lands.
So technology can be used to both monitor and protect the rainforest.
Exactly. And there's another aspect that often gets overlooked, the potential to learn from traditional ecological knowledge. Indigenous communities have been living in and managing the rainforest for centuries. They know so much about sustainable practices and medicinal plants. And technology can help us document and share that knowledge, bridge the gap between traditional wisdom and modern science.
That's a cool perspective. So we're not just relying on high-tech solutions. We're also looking to those who have already been stewards of the rainforest.
Right. Speaking of learning from the past, there's this concept called silvopasture that's becoming more popular.
Silvopasture.
Yeah, it's basically a system that integrates trees and pasture land. Instead of clearing all the trees, you keep them and incorporate them into the landscape. It provides shade for animals, improves soil fertility, creates a more biodiverse ecosystem.
So it's better for the environment and could be more profitable for ranchers.
Exactly. It's not a quick fix, but it has the potential to really change how we think about land management in the Amazon.
It's encouraging to hear about all these different solutions. We've talked about high-tech monitoring, traditional practices, sustainable ranching.
And we haven't even touched on policy changes, international collaboration, raising awareness among consumers.
It's a multifaceted problem that needs a multi-pronged approach.
Definitely.
We talked about those wildfires back in 2019. How is the rainforest recovering from those? What did we learn?
The 2019 fires were a stark reminder of how vulnerable the rainforest is. The Amazon's good at regenerating, but the scale of those fires was unprecedented. We're still studying the long-term impacts.
So the rainforest might not fully recover.
It's a concern, especially with the ongoing deforestation and climate change. Those fires highlighted the link between environmental policy and rainforest health.
Right. A lot of people say that relaxed environmental regulations were partly to blame.
Yeah.
So strengthening those policies is crucial.
Absolutely. We need strong policies, both in Brazil and internationally, to combat illegal deforestation, promote sustainable practices, address those underlying drivers like agricultural expansion.
So the 2019 fires were a wake-up call.
You could say that. We can't take the Amazon for granted.
It's definitely a wake-up call for me. This whole conversation has been eye-opening.
Good.
Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what individuals can do to help protect the Amazon.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problem, right?
Yeah.
You feel like your individual actions won't make a difference, but they do. Every choice we make as consumers, it has a ripple effect. What we buy, what we eat, how we travel.
Right. So what are some tangible actions listeners can take?
One of the most impactful things is to reduce our consumption of products that are linked to deforestation.
So like what? Give me some specifics.
Think about your diet. How much beef do you eat? We talked about cattle ranching.
Yeah.
Reducing your meat consumption, especially beef, that can make a difference.
So meatless Mondays, maybe? More plant-based protein?
Exactly. And it's not just meat. Think about other products that might be sourced from the Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Soy, palm oil, timber.
Okay.
Look for sustainable certifications. Do your research. Support companies committed to responsible sourcing.
I have to admit, I don't always pay attention to those certifications. What are some, reliable ones to look for?
There are a few. The Forest Stewardship Council, FSC, they have a pretty rigorous certification for sustainably managed forests. You'll see their logo on wood and paper products. For things like palm oil, look for the RSPO, the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil.
Okay, good to know. I'll be checking those labels more carefully. So it's kind of empowering, right? Even those small choices at the grocery store can have an impact.
Exactly.
What about our travel choices?
If you're planning a trip to the Amazon, do your research. Choose ecotourism operators who are committed to sustainability, supporting those local communities.
So not just any jungle tour will do. What should we look for?
Look for transparency. They should minimize their impact, respect indigenous cultures, contribute to conservation. Ideally, they should be working directly with those local communities, making sure the economic benefits stay there.
It's about being a conscious traveler.
Right.
Not just a tourist. Are there other ways, though, beyond our individual choices that we can help?
Absolutely. Supporting organizations that are doing work on the ground, protecting indigenous lands, promoting sustainable agriculture, researching and monitoring the rainforest.
Any organizations that come to mind?
There are so many doing great work. The Amazon Conservation Association, the Rainforest Alliance, Amazon Watch. They all have different approaches, but they're all working towards the same goal.
Protecting the Amazon.
Exactly. Even a small donation can make a difference.
That's good to know. It sounds like protecting the Amazon, though, it's really a global effort.
It is.
So what role do governments and international organizations play in all of this?
They're crucial, especially when it comes to policy changes and international collaboration. We need stronger environmental regulations to combat illegal deforestation. We need international agreements that recognize the importance of the Amazon and provide funding for conservation.
There's a lot of work to be done.
There is, but the momentum is building. More and more people are realizing how important the Amazon is.
Well, this deep dive has been eye-opening for me. I feel like I have a much deeper understanding of the Amazon now, how everything's connected.
And remember, you don't have to be an expert to make a difference. Start small, make conscious choices, use your voice to advocate for change.
That's a great takeaway. To our listeners, we encourage you to learn more about the Amazon. Check out the resources in the show notes and take action.
The fate of the Amazon, the fate of the planet, really, it depends on all of us.
That's right. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking questions.